In the cold, silent void, 1 million miles from our home, a golden eye the size of a tennis court is staring into the deep past. The James Webb Space Telescope was built to answer the oldest question in human history. Are we alone? For decades, we expected the answer to be a quiet, microscopic whisper. A tiny trace of bacteria hidden under the ice of a frozen moon, or a faint, ambiguous signal lost in the static of the cosmos. We expected to find primitive life struggling to survive in a hostile universe. But we were wrong. What the James Webb Space Telescope just found isn't a struggle. It is perfection. And that is exactly what makes it so terrifying. Astronomers are cautiously whispering the name Earth 3.0, but that title is a comforting lie. It is designed to make you think of a pristine, untouched wilderness waiting for humanity to arrive and claim it. But as we peel back the layers of the actual data, a chilling reality is beginning to emerge. This isn't a new home. This is a planet that mathematically should not exist. To understand why this discovery is breaking the minds of astrophysicists around the world, you have to understand how we actually look at distant planets. When scientists announce that they have found a world hundreds of light years away, they aren't zooming in with a camera like a satellite mapping a city. Most planets are entirely invisible, completely drowned out by the blinding light of their host stars. Instead, researchers study the starlight as it filters through the planet's atmosphere during a transit. Different gases absorb specific colors of light, leaving behind a unique chemical fingerprint in the spectrum. Decode the missing colors, and you know exactly what is swirling in that alien air. This is what the James Webb Space Telescope was built for. Its massive gold-coated beryllium mirrors operate at temperatures hundreds of degrees below freezing, allowing it to detect the faintest traces of infrared light. It is a machine so impossibly sensitive that it could detect the heat signature of a bumblebee on our moon. So, when it turned its gaze toward the habitable zones of distant star systems, we expected to find the raw, chaotic building blocks of life. And at first, the public narrative seemed to align perfectly with those expectations. We looked at worlds like K2-18b, a massive sub-Neptune located 124 light-years away in the Leo constellation. The telescope found water vapor. It found carbon dioxide. It even found tantalizing hints of dimethyl sulfide, a compound that, here on Earth, is almost exclusively produced by living organisms like marine phytoplankton. The media celebrated. The science communicators told us that we were looking at a Hycean world, a planet covered in a vast, churning ocean of liquid water under a thick hydrogen atmosphere. They told us that we were one step closer to finding a second Earth and that the universe was finally opening its doors to us. But this is where the popular documentaries stop, and this is where the real mystery begins. The public is being fed a sanitized, comfortable version of the data. They are focusing on the discovery of water and basic carbon molecules because it fits our natural understanding of evolution. What they are not telling you is that the chemical breakdown of Earth 3.0 is completely, fundamentally wrong. In the natural universe, habitable zones are violent, unforgiving places. Planets are relentlessly bombarded by cosmic radiation. Their atmospheres are violently stripped away by solar winds, and their surfaces are continuously reshaped by chaotic geological forces. A natural atmosphere is a messy, noisy cocktail of volcanic ash, random chemical reactions, and fluctuating gases. If you look at our own planet's history, the atmosphere has wildly swung between toxic extremes for billions of years before settling into its current state. But the spectral data coming back from Earth 3.0 has absolutely no noise. It is too clean. The James Webb Space Telescope has detected staggering amounts of methane and oxygen coexisting in the atmosphere. In the world of chemistry, methane and oxygen are mortal enemies. They are highly reactive. When they meet, they violently consume each other. To have massive, stable quantities of both gases existing simultaneously in an atmosphere means that something must be constantly, actively replenishing them. On Earth, that delicate balance is maintained by the chaotic war between global biology and geology. Cows, swamps, and bacteria pump out methane, while forests and algae pump out oxygen. It fluctuates. It wavers. It is a biological tug-of-war. But on Earth 3.0, the ratios are fixed. They are mathematically pristine. The chemical imbalances detected by the telescope cannot be explained by any known abiotic, non-living process. And more disturbingly, they cannot be explained by a natural evolving biosphere either. If you have an ocean full of primitive algae or struggling microbes, you get massive variations. You get seasonal shifts. You get the messy chemical footprint of nature trying to figure itself out. The transmission spectroscopy from this new world doesn't look like a biological struggle. It looks like an industrial exhaust system operating at absolute peak efficiency. This is the anomaly that is keeping astronomers awake at night. We are looking at an atmosphere that is artificially stabilized. The carbon dioxide, the methane, the oxygen, they are locked in precise ratios that strongly suggest a massive global engineering process. It is as if someone took the chaotic blueprint of a habitable world and violently purged all the natural imperfections. We have always assumed that when we finally found another habitable world, it would be a stroke of blind cosmic luck. We thought we would be looking at a miraculous coincidence of orbital mechanics and random chemistry. But the data filtering into the servers from 1 million miles away is telling a deeply unsettling story. The universe isn't a vast, empty wilderness waiting for us to explore it. It is a highly organized, heavily monitored system. Earth 3.0 is not a natural phenomenon. Its perfect atmosphere, its balanced temperatures, its exact chemical positioning. These are not the hallmarks of evolution. They are the hallmarks of deliberate design. The James Webb Space Telescope hasn't just found a new Earth. It has accidentally looked through the window of a private cosmic estate. We have spent over a century broadcasting our presence into the dark forest of the universe, wondering if anyone was listening. Now, looking at the impossible, engineered perfection of Earth 3.0, the terrifying realization is beginning to set in. We aren't the brave explorers we thought we were. We are oblivious latecomers, staring at a piece of cosmic real estate that was claimed, terraformed, and occupied long before humanity even learned how to look up at the stars. To comprehend the true scale of the nightmare we are dealing with, you have to understand the machine that is bringing it to light. When space agencies announce they have discovered a new exoplanet, they are not pointing a lens into the dark and taking a direct photograph. Distant planets are entirely invisible, completely drowned out by the blinding, overwhelming glare of the stars they orbit. Instead, astronomers rely on a brilliantly complex method called transmission spectroscopy. Imagine an alien world passing directly in front of its sun. As it makes this transit, a tiny, almost imperceptible fraction of that starlight filters through the planet's atmosphere before making the trillion-mile journey across the void to Earth. As this light travels through the alien air, different atmospheric gases absorb very specific colors, or wavelengths, of that light. When the light finally hits the massive, supercooled golden mirrors of the James Webb Space Telescope, it is fractured, visibly missing specific bands of color. By decoding exactly which colors are missing, scientists can read the precise chemical fingerprint of a world they cannot even see. It is an absolute triumph of human engineering, a tool so impossibly sensitive it could detect the heat signature of a bumblebee on the moon. But right now, this unparalleled machine is showing us a chemical profile that is breaking the minds of the people analyzing it. When researchers first aimed the telescope at the habitable zones of distant star systems, they were hoping to find the faint, struggling whispers of primitive biology. They wanted to find water vapor, or perhaps a trace of carbon dioxide. but the data coming back from the target worlds showed an atmospheric cocktail that immediately threw the scientific community into a quiet, desperate panic. The telescope detected staggering, dominant amounts of carbon dioxide and methane swirling together in the alien air. On its own, methane is not entirely shocking, but the problem lies deeply within the ratios. In the harsh reality of chemistry, methane is highly unstable when it mixes with other reactive gases. It breaks down rapidly and violently. To have massive dominant concentrations of methane existing in a stable equilibrium with carbon dioxide and other elements means that something on that planet is actively, relentlessly pumping it back into the sky. A natural atmosphere with this composition should have burned itself out or settled into a dead, inert state millions of years ago. Instead, it is being artificially maintained. Naturally, the immediate reaction of mainstream science is to find a safe, non-living explanation to calm the nerves of the public. They call these abiotic processes. Teams of astrobiologists and planetary geologists have desperately run models trying to explain away these chemical imbalances through geology alone. Could it be an unimaginably massive network of underwater volcanoes constantly erupting? The math simply does not work out because the sheer scale of volcanic activity required to produce that much methane would also produce massive plumes of other gases that the telescope completely fails to see. Could it be a bizarre photochemical reaction in the upper atmosphere? The simulations fail to reproduce the observed ratios. They have tried to explain it as a deep, heavy atmosphere undergoing strange abiotic chemistry, but the precise fixed ratios of these gases refuse to fit any known natural geological model. When the abiotic models fail, scientists reluctantly pivot to the next safest theory: basic, primitive biology. They try to frame these massive gas signatures as the byproduct of trillions of tiny ocean microbes, similar to phytoplankton or algae in our own oceans. They desperately want to believe that these worlds are just global oceans filled with primitive slime, burping out methane. It is a comforting thought, a narrative that keeps humanity safely at the top of the cosmic food chain. But deep within the fringe communities analyzing the leaked data, a far more terrifying narrative is taking hold, one that perfectly aligns with the impossibility of the data. This is known as the occupied atmosphere hypothesis. This theory abandons the comforting illusion of primitive algae and looks at the cold, hard spectral anomalies for what they really are. The hypothesis suggests that the unexpected methane to carbon dioxide ratios are not the result of blind natural evolution or struggling microbial life. Instead, they indicate deliberate, massive industrial activity. The occupied atmosphere hypothesis argues that alien biospheres on these worlds haven't just evolved naturally. They have reached highly advanced technological stages. When we look at the transmission spectroscopy data, we aren't seeing the faint biological footprint of a planet trying to sustain life. We are looking directly at the exhaust fumes of an advanced, heavily industrialized alien biosphere. The massive quantities of methane and carbon dioxide locked in an impossible equilibrium are the planetary-scale emissions of a civilization running a global engine. They have subtly and perhaps irreversibly altered the chemical makeup of their sky. Think about how our own planet looks from the outside. For the last century, humanity has been radically altering Earth's atmosphere, pumping carbon dioxide, methane, and industrial chemicals into the air. We are leaving a loud, undeniable techno-signature that could easily be read by any alien telescope powerful enough to look at us. The occupied atmosphere hypothesis suggests we are witnessing the exact same phenomenon, but on a scale that absolutely dwarfs our own industrial revolution. The scientists struggling in their labs to explain these imbalances through abiotic geology or primitive ocean bacteria are missing the forest for the trees. They are staring at the dense, suffocating smog of an alien metropolis and desperately trying to convince themselves it's just a strange volcano. This frames the entire James Webb discovery in a chilling new light. The gases swirling in the sky of Earth 3.0 are not the signs of a virgin world waiting for humanity to colonize it. They are the byproducts of a technological empire. The planet isn't just habitable, it is actively, heavily occupied. And if we can read their industrial exhaust fumes from over 100 light-years away, it means their technological capability is far beyond anything we can currently comprehend. Science operates on patience. It is a slow, methodical machine designed to filter out human error and wild imagination. When space agencies point a $10 billion observatory like the James Webb Space Telescope into the deep void, they do not rush to the podium to announce little green men. They release data in a slow, deliberate trickle. They use words like potential, candidate, and anomaly. This caution is, by design. But in the case of Earth 3.0, that standard scientific caution has allegedly been weaponized into something entirely different. The official reports you read in the news are not just cautious, they are heavily curated. What we are witnessing is not a transparent scientific process, but a tightly controlled narrative. Let us look at the official story first. When astronomers turned the James Webb Space Telescope toward distant habitable zone planets like K2-18b, a massive world 124 light-years away, the initial announcements were carefully measured. In 2019, scientists confirmed the presence of water vapor. The world celebrated. 4 years later, Webb's incredibly sensitive infrared instruments detected carbon dioxide and methane swirling in the alien air. Again, the press releases were cheerful but restrained. They told us that we might be looking at a Hycean planet, a massive, watery world covered by a thick, hydrogen-rich atmosphere. They suggested that beneath the swirling clouds there could be a global ocean where primitive, microbial life might be taking its first evolutionary steps. Then came the discovery that made the scientific community hold its breath. The telescope picked up tantalizing hints of a molecule called dimethyl sulfide, or DMS. Here on Earth, DMS is not produced by volcanoes. It is not produced by weather. It is produced almost entirely by living organisms, specifically tiny marine life like phytoplankton in our oceans. If you smell the salty tang of the sea on a windy day, you're smelling dimethyl sulfide. The detection of this gas on a planet over 100 light-years away should have been the most monumental announcement in human history. It should have been the definitive answer to the ultimate question of whether we are alone. But immediately, the narrative was walked back. Space agencies quickly stated that the signal was weak, that it had not yet reached the rigid 5 sigma level of certainty required to confirm a major discovery. The 5 sigma standard means there is only a 1 in a million chance that the data is a random glitch or background noise. The official stance became one of extreme, almost aggressive caution. They reminded the public that DMS might theoretically be formed by unknown abiotic processes without biology under certain exoplanet conditions. They stated that they simply needed more time, perhaps 16 to 24 more hours of telescope observation to know for sure. The public was told to wait. This is where the cracks in the official story begin to show. The public is told that the data is inconclusive, but the actions of the institutions operating the telescope tell a very different story. Telescope time on the James Webb is the most fiercely contested, highly prized resource in modern astronomy. Thousands of researchers globally compete for just a few hours to look at distant galaxies, nebulae, and black holes. Yet priority observation time was suddenly and quietly redirected to constantly monitor these specific exoplanetary targets. If the data was truly just a weak, noisy glitch, why the sudden overwhelming reallocation of resources? Independent researchers and fringe astronomical communities began to notice glaring discrepancies. When raw telemetry and spectral data filter down from the servers, the chemical imbalances do not look like weak background noise. The concentration of these gases, particularly the bizarre coexistence of highly reactive methane and oxygen, indicates an atmospheric engine running at maximum capacity. The official reports focus heavily on the possibility of a simple, primitive water world to keep expectations grounded. But the leaked interpretations circulating on obscure Discord servers and deep lore Reddit threads suggest something entirely different. They point out that the transmission spectroscopy profiles, the exact missing colors of light absorbed by the planet's atmosphere, are far too pristine to be the burps of primitive ocean algae. The data we are being shown is real, but it is incomplete. This leads us to the most unsettling theory currently tearing through the fringe astrophysics community. It is known as the signal suppression protocol. This theory proposes a terrifying reality. The world's space agencies and global institutions already know exactly what those chemical imbalances mean, but they are deliberately classifying the strongest, most undeniable data. According to this protocol, the James Webb Space Telescope has already detected biosignatures, and more importantly, technosignatures, far stronger than anything that has been publicly released. The data we are seeing in the news is merely the sanitized, heavily filtered surface of a much deeper, darker pool of information. Why would they hide the greatest discovery in human history? The answer lies in the psychological concept of societal destabilization. For decades, governments and sociologists have run simulations on how human civilization would react to the sudden, undeniable proof of highly advanced extraterrestrial intelligence. The results are almost universally catastrophic. If an institution held a press conference tomorrow and announced that we have discovered a planet covered not in simple water and microbes, but enveloped in the dense, unmistakable exhaust fumes of an industrialized alien empire, the global reaction would not be scientific curiosity. It would be profound, paralyzing existential terror. The signal suppression protocol exists because the reality of Earth 3.0 is too dangerous to be dropped on the public all at once. If the occupied atmosphere hypothesis is correct and we are looking at the smog of a hyper-advanced civilization, the immediate implications are staggering. It means we are vastly technologically outmatched by a neighbor in our own cosmic backyard. It means our religions, our philosophies, and our understanding of our own supremacy are instantly rendered obsolete. The stock markets would panic, religious institutions would fracture, and global panic would ensue as humanity suddenly realized it was just a tiny, vulnerable fish in a very dark and heavily occupied ocean. To prevent this societal collapse, the institutions initiate a slow, deliberate leak of information. They cannot completely hide the discoveries because the James Webb Space Telescope is a massive international collaboration, and too many scientists have access to the raw data streams. Instead of a total blackout, they practice narrative conditioning. They layer massive information gaps over real scientific caution. First, they announce they have found a habitable zone planet. Society digests this. A few years later, they announce the discovery of water. Society accepts this. Then they tease the discovery of biological gases, like dimethyl sulfide, but immediately cushion the blow by claiming the signal is weak and might just be a natural chemical glitch. They are slowly acclimatizing humanity to the idea of alien life, drip-feeding the data over years or even decades so that when the final, undeniable truth is revealed, it feels like an expected scientific confirmation rather than a sudden apocalyptic shock. The signal suppression protocol is not about burying the truth forever. It is about controlling the psychological impact of the truth. But while this protocol might protect the public order, it creates a terrifying void for those who know what to look for. When you understand how transmission spectroscopy works, and you look at the raw data being whispered about in the corridors of astrophysics departments, the sheer scale of the cover-up becomes apparent. The ratios of methane, carbon dioxide, and oxygen on Earth 3.0 do not fluctuate like a natural breathing biosphere. They are locked in a rigid, perfect mathematical equilibrium. The missing data, the data that is being actively suppressed, allegedly shows direct thermal anomalies. We are not just talking about chemical exhaust. We are talking about infrared heat maps that display geometric, non-natural structures on the planet's surface. We are talking about the thermal footprint of sprawling artificial megacities. The scientific community is being forced to play along, using the genuine need for rigorous peer review and the 5 Sigma standard as a convenient shield to delay the inevitable. When a researcher says they need more time to rule out abiotic processes, they might actually be buying time for intelligence agencies to figure out how to frame the existence of an alien superpower. The James Webb Space Telescope was built to pierce the veil of the cosmos, to see through the dust and the distance and reveal the absolute truth of the universe. But the irony is that its most profound discovery is now hidden behind a veil of our own making. We were promised that this telescope would show us our new home. We were promised it would find Earth 2.0 or Earth 3.0, a pristine Eden waiting in the dark. Instead, it looked into the abyss and saw an industrial giant staring back. The data we weren't meant to see is leaking out, and the picture it paints is chilling. The universe isn't a silent, empty frontier. It is a crowded, heavily industrialized territory, and those in power are desperately trying to keep us in the dark because they know the most terrifying truth of all. The owners of Earth 3.0 are out there, and if our telescope can see their industrial exhaust, their telescopes have undoubtedly already seen ours. The silence of our space agencies isn't just an attempt to prevent panic. It is the silence of a prey animal, hoping that if it stays very, very quiet, the predator in the dark won't notice it's there. If we accept the terrifying premise that the chemical anomalies detected by the James Webb Space Telescope are not natural, a much darker question immediately demands an answer. If the swirling atmosphere of Earth 3.0 is a manufactured engine, who built it? And more importantly, how did a world so flawlessly balanced come to exist in a universe defined by absolute chaos? To understand the sheer impossibility of what we are looking at, you have to look at the violent reality of planetary evolution. In the natural universe, planets are not born as pristine, life-supporting paradises. They are forged in catastrophic collisions and subjected to the relentless sterilizing fury of their host stars. Just look at our own cosmic neighborhood. Mars may have once held liquid water, but its atmosphere was violently stripped away by solar winds over 1 billion years ago, turning it into a freezing, irradiated desert. Venus was baked by a runaway greenhouse effect, trapped under a crushing atmosphere of toxic gases and temperatures hot enough to melt lead. Even Earth, our supposed standard for habitability, swung wildly between toxic extremes for billions of years before a fragile, chaotic biological struggle balanced our sky. Nature is messy, violent, and highly unstable. But the data pouring in from distant super-Earths in the Goldilocks zone tells a completely different story. The James Webb Space Telescope has used transmission spectroscopy to decode the starlight filtering through the air of these distant worlds, revealing atmospheres that defy all natural models. We are seeing worlds orbiting volatile red dwarf stars, stars notorious for blasting their planets with atmosphere-destroying ultraviolet radiation, that somehow possess incredibly stable, thick, oxygen-rich atmospheres. The chemical ratios are mathematically perfect, locked in an equilibrium that should be impossible without a massive active stabilization mechanism. This impossible perfection has given rise to one of the most chilling concepts circulating in the fringe astrophysics community: the terraforming ownership theory. This theory shatters our naive, comforting understanding of exoplanetary discovery. It argues that the pristine, oxygen-rich atmospheres JWST is detecting are not the result of billions of years of lucky biological evolution. They are the result of artificial planetary scale engineering. Imagine a Type 2 or Type 3 civilization on the Kardashev scale. We are talking about beings who do not just build cities, they engineer entire solar systems. According to the terraforming ownership theory, these advanced civilizations locate barren, lifeless rocks situated in the habitable zones of quiet red or orange dwarf stars. Over millennia, they strip away toxic gases, reignite geological cores, and pump synthesized atmospheric stabilizers into the sky. They construct a world from the ground up, manipulating gravity, pressure, and chemical compounds to create the perfect terrarium. When astronomers look at the transmission spectra of a planet like K2-18b and celebrate the discovery of water vapor, carbon dioxide, and methane, they are acting like children finding a shiny stone. They tell the public that we are looking at a watery world with the potential for primitive microbes. But under the lens of the terraforming ownership theory, these perfectly balanced gases are not the humble beginnings of alien algae. They are the calibrated life support parameters of a fully functioning, artificially maintained environment. The dimethyl sulfide and oxygen are not biological accidents. They are atmospheric landscaping features planted by a civilization that possesses the power of gods. This forces a horrifying reframing of Earth 3.0 and humanity's place in the cosmos. For decades, we have stared up at the stars with a pioneer's mindset. We have viewed the universe as a vast, empty wilderness just waiting for us to arrive. We look at our dying planet and tell ourselves that if we can just build ships fast enough, we can cross the void and claim these pristine worlds for ourselves. We talk endlessly about colonizing other planets, extracting their resources, and establishing a new home for humanity. But the terraforming ownership theory tells us that the universe is not an empty frontier waiting for our flag. It is a highly regulated, fully developed cosmic real estate market. We haven't found a new home for humanity. We have accidentally aimed our $10 billion telescope through the digital fences of a private cosmic estate that is already heavily engineered and strictly owned by someone else. We are looking at property. Think about the profound existential dread of this realization. If these perfectly habitable worlds are the result of artificial terraforming, it means they represent a staggering investment of time, energy, and technology. They are valuable assets. And if this cosmic real estate is owned, it means there are landlords. We are not brave explorers standing on the shores of a virgin continent. We are oblivious trespassers peeking into a manicured garden that was planted, cultivated, and is currently guarded by an empire we cannot even begin to comprehend. Humanity has spent the last century broadcasting its exact location into the dark, shouting our presence into the void while searching for a backup planet. We assumed that whoever we found would either be primitive microbes or a benevolent civilization willing to share the stars. We never stopped to consider the terrifying reality of cosmic property rights. If a civilization is advanced enough to sculpt the atmosphere of Earth 3.0 to stabilize its climate and shield it from the fury of its host star, what do you think they do to pests that wander too close to their claimed territory? The James Webb Space Telescope hasn't just shown us a habitable world. It has shown us a "no trespassing" sign written in the chemical language of an engineered atmosphere. We are staring at a private cosmic estate, and the most terrifying part isn't that Earth 3.0 is taken. The terrifying part is that the owners are out there. They possess technology indistinguishable from magic, and they now know that we are watching them. There is a profound arrogance woven into the very fabric of human nature. We always cast ourselves as the protagonist of the universe. When we build a machine like the James Webb Space Telescope and launch it 1,000,000 miles into the freezing dark, we think of ourselves as explorers charting the unknown. We imagine that we are the ones holding the flashlight, sweeping its beam across the dark corners of the cosmic room. We celebrate the discovery of Earth 3.0 as if we are the brave hunters who have finally tracked down elusive, hiding prey. But this narrative is a comforting delusion, a bedtime story we tell ourselves to feel safe in an impossibly vast cosmos. The terrifying reality is that we are not the hunters. We are, and have always been, completely exposed. To understand the chilling reality of our situation, you have to completely pivot your perspective and look back at Earth from the abyss. The James Webb Space Telescope is an absolute masterpiece of human engineering, but it is fundamentally a passive, fragile observer. It relies on capturing incredibly faint traces of infrared light, the ghostly remnants of starlight that have somehow survived a trillion-mile journey after filtering through an alien atmosphere. It does not actively scan. It simply catches whatever tiny fragments of data happen to hit its gold-plated mirrors. It is the astronomical equivalent of cupping your hand to your ear and straining to hear a pin drop across a crowded, roaring city. But Earth? Earth is not whispering. For well over a century, humanity has been screaming at the top of its lungs into the dark forest of the universe. We think of ourselves as hidden by the sheer vastness of space, but we have been broadcasting our exact coordinates, our rapid technological progress, and our biological signatures in ways that are scientifically impossible to ignore. It started with the Industrial Revolution. In a cosmic blink of an eye, a single hyper-aggressive species began digging up millions of years of stored carbon and violently burning it, pumping massive unnatural quantities of carbon dioxide, methane, and toxic byproducts into the atmosphere. If an alien astronomer pointed a transmission spectrograph at Earth during the 19th or 20th century, they wouldn't see the slow, chaotic natural cycles of a primitive world. They would see a sudden, explosive atmospheric anomaly. They would see the unmistakable chemical footprint of a planet being rapidly, aggressively industrialized. We pumped chlorofluorocarbons, synthetic gases that absolutely do not exist anywhere in nature, into our sky. We effectively built a neon sign in our atmosphere that pulses into the void, loudly declaring, "We are here and we are accelerating." And then came the noise. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, humanity discovered how to manipulate electromagnetic waves. We began blasting radio signals, television broadcasts, and high-frequency military radar out into the cosmos. These signals do not just vanish when they leave our atmosphere. They travel outward in an expanding, unstoppable sphere at the speed of light. Today, that radio bubble is well over 100 light-years across. It has already washed over thousands of distant star systems. If Earth 3.0 is located within that radius, orbiting a quiet star 120 light-years away, then our earliest, loudest signals have already crashed against their atmosphere. The thickest, most toxic smog of our industrial revolution has already been intercepted, decoded, and analyzed by their instruments. This is where the true horror of the terraforming ownership theory comes into play. If the owners of Earth 3.0 are a Type 2 or Type 3 civilization on the Kardashev scale, if they possess the godlike power to artificially terraform a planet, strip away toxic gases, reignite dead geological cores, and lock an entire atmosphere into a mathematically perfect equilibrium, then their observational technology defies human comprehension. We are incredibly proud of our $10 billion telescope. We celebrate its ability to detect missing color bands in infrared light. But to a civilization capable of engineering entire solar systems, our greatest observatory is nothing more than a primitive, cracked magnifying glass. If we can use our fledgling infant technology to detect the chemical exhaust fumes of their world from over 100 light-years away, what do you think they can see when they look back at us? They wouldn't be relying on faint pixelated dips in starlight. A civilization of that magnitude likely possesses telescope arrays the size of whole planets, or they use the immense gravitational lensing of their own host star to magnify distant worlds with terrifying clarity. They don't just see the chemical breakdown of our air. They have likely resolved the shapes of our continents. They have mapped the heat signatures of our sprawling concrete megacities. They have watched our polar ice caps melt in real time, and they have been watching us for decades. Flip the narrative. The headlines proudly declared that the James Webb Space Telescope discovered Earth 3.0. Space agencies held press conferences congratulating themselves on finally finding an occupied world. But we didn't discover anything. Our telescope merely confirmed the existence of a civilization that has been meticulously tracking Earth for generations. Imagine the realization dawning on their alien astronomers as the light from Earth hit their advanced sensors over the last century. They watched as our planet went from a quiet agrarian world to a glowing, heavily polluted industrial powerhouse in a fraction of a cosmic second. They watched the sudden, blinding thermal flashes of our atomic tests in the 1940s and 50s. They have intercepted and decoded the chaotic, aggressive radio leakage of our military radars and our global communications. They know exactly how fast we are advancing. They know that we are a species that multiplies rapidly, consumes resources violently, and possesses a terrifying capacity for self-destruction. To an ancient, highly structured, artificially stabilized empire that values perfect planetary equilibrium, humanity isn't just a fascinating biological anomaly. We are a rapidly mutating virus. We are a loud, aggressive neighbor who has just discovered gunpowder and is currently playing with matches in the dry brush. This perspective reversal changes everything about the data we are receiving from Earth 3.0. When our astronomers analyze the perfectly balanced methane and oxygen ratios or the impossible geometric thermal patterns on the planet's surface, they assume they are looking at the everyday hustle and bustle of a peaceful alien society. They think we are peering into an exotic fish tank. But if they have known about us for decades, if our radio signals and industrial smog hit their sensors years ago, then what we are looking at might not be routine industry at all. What if the pristine, heavily engineered atmosphere of Earth 3.0 is actively being fortified? What if the sudden spikes in industrial activity, the massive geometric heat signatures that our telescope is just now picking up, are not the signs of a peaceful society expanding, but the thermal exhaust of an advanced civilization shifting rapidly into a wartime economy? The universe is vast, and the speed of light creates a terrifying temporal delay. We are looking at their planet as it existed over a century ago, which means the exact moment their astronomical instruments received our first radio broadcasts and industrial light signatures lines up perfectly with the time period we are currently observing. We aren't catching them unaware. We are watching their immediate, real-time reaction to the terrifying discovery of Earth. This is the ultimate paranoia escalation. We built our greatest machine, pointed it at the sky, and thought we were looking through a keyhole to spy on a brave new world. We never considered that the eye on the other side of the door has been watching us walk loudly down the hallway for 100 years. They have mapped our capabilities. They know our exact location. They have had decades to study our biology, our aggression, and our technological trajectory. They have had a century-long head start to prepare for the day we finally looked back. The scientific community tells us that finding Earth 3.0 is a message of hope, a beautiful sign that the universe is teeming with life and that we are finally joining a cosmic community. But when you strip away the naive optimism and look at the brutal, unforgiving reality of cosmic observation, the discovery feels entirely different. It feels like stepping into a pitch-black, silent forest, striking a bright red flare, and suddenly seeing the reflection of a sniper's scope in the distant tree line. We didn't find them. We merely turned around and realized they were already staring right at us. And an empire that has the power to terraform planets, a civilization that prefers the quiet, organized perfection of an engineered world, is not going to tolerate a loud, toxic, unpredictable species moving into their neighborhood. We spent the last century shouting blindly into the dark to see if anyone was out there. Now the James Webb Space Telescope has proven that they were. They heard us, they have been tracking us. And whatever they decided to do about the noisy, violent world called Earth, they decided it decades ago. We are just sitting here, completely exposed, gazing through our golden mirrors, waiting for the consequences of our own cosmic screams to finally reach us. In the summer of 1950, physicists sat around a table discussing the vastness of the cosmos when Enrico Fermi asked a question that would haunt astronomy for decades. Where is everybody? The mathematics of our galaxy are inescapable. The Milky Way is a spiral of 100,000 light-years across, containing hundreds of billions of stars. Our Sun is a relatively young, entirely unremarkable yellow dwarf. If you run the numbers, there should be billions of Earth-like planets sitting in the Goldilocks zones of their respective stars, perfectly positioned for liquid water and life. Given the staggering 14-billion-year age of the universe, any civilization that started just a few million years before us should have easily colonized the entire galaxy by now. They should have filled the void with radio chatter, megastructures, and undeniable signs of their existence. And yet, when we point our massive radio dishes at the sky, we hear absolutely nothing. The universe seems stubbornly, terrifyingly empty. For generations, we comforted ourselves with two explanations for this famous Fermi paradox. We told ourselves that either intelligent life is so incredibly rare that we are a miraculous, lonely accident, or that space is simply too vast and communication is too slow for anyone to bother saying hello. But the discovery of Earth 3.0 completely shatters both of those comforting illusions. If the James Webb Space Telescope has indeed detected an artificial, heavily industrialized atmosphere just over 100 light-years away, it means intelligence is not rare at all. It means they are right next door. And if they possess the godlike technology required to artificially terraform a planet and stabilize highly reactive gases like methane and oxygen into a mathematically perfect equilibrium, then the vastness of space is not a barrier for them. They possess astronomical tools that make our $10 billion telescope look like a cracked magnifying glass. They have undoubtedly intercepted our loud, aggressive radio waves and industrial exhaust. They know we are here. So why the deafening silence? Why haven't they sent a signal, a probe, or an invitation to join the galactic community? To answer this, we have to delve into one of the most unsettling models circulating in the deep lore of fringe astrophysics, the zoo hypothesis reinforced model. This theory completely abandons the naive hope of a friendly, benevolent cosmic neighborhood. It expands on the classic Fermi paradox explanation and forces us to confront a deeply humiliating reality about our place in the universe. The model suggests that advanced civilizations are out there in staggering numbers, but they deliberately and aggressively avoid contact with us. According to this reinforced framework, Earth 3.0 is not an isolated anomaly, and it certainly isn't a lonely outpost. The fringe theorists argue that Earth-like planets that are already occupied are actually part of a massive, heavily monitored cosmic network. These Type 2 or Type 3 civilizations have long ago mapped the galaxy, claimed the most valuable habitable real estate, and established a sprawling, interconnected web of engineered worlds. They communicate using methods we cannot even fathom, perhaps utilizing quantum entanglement or manipulating gravitational waves, leaving humanity completely oblivious, playing in a sandbox of primitive radio waves. In this scenario, the universe is not a silent, empty wilderness. It is a bustling, highly structured empire. We just aren't allowed to see it. The zoo hypothesis. Reinforced dictates that emerging civilizations like humanity are actively observed but strictly not engaged. We are not viewed as peers. We are not viewed as a potential ally to be welcomed into a grand cosmic federation. We are viewed as a volatile, primitive, and highly dangerous anomaly. Think about humanity from the perspective of an ancient civilization that values the flawless, mathematically stable equilibrium of a terraformed world. They look at Earth and see a species that has spent the last century rapidly detonating nuclear weapons, violently altering its own biosphere, and filling its orbital space with thousands of pieces of toxic debris. We are a species that multiplies aggressively, consumes resources with no regard for planetary balance, and constantly points weapons of mass destruction at ourselves. To the owners of Earth 3.0, we are not explorers. We are a biological hazard. This realization reframes the entire nature of the Fermi paradox. The silence of the cosmos is not an accident of distance. It is an intentional, highly coordinated exclusion. The universe isn't silent. It is selective. We are being deliberately quarantined. Imagine a sprawling wildlife reserve here on Earth. The park rangers do not walk into the tiger enclosure and attempt to establish diplomatic relations with the animals. They do not teach the wolves how to build fire. They observe them from a safe distance, monitor their numbers, and ensure they do not break out of their designated boundaries. According to the zoo hypothesis reinforced, our entire solar system is that enclosure. Earth 3.0 isn't a beacon of hope. It is quite literally a watchtower located just outside our cage. The artificially perfected atmosphere that the James Webb Space Telescope is straining to see isn't just the exhaust of a thriving society. It might be the life support system of a heavily fortified observation post designed to keep an eye on the aggressive, noisy primates 120 light-years away. The psychological horror of this paradigm shift is profound. For decades, humanity has proudly beamed its location, its mathematical achievements, and its biological blueprints into the dark, desperately hoping someone would pick up the phone. In 1974, we blasted the Arecibo message toward a distant star cluster. We sent the Voyager probes into deep space, carrying golden records with the sounds of Earth. We thought we were bold pioneers knocking on the door of the universe. But if the zoo hypothesis reinforced is true, our messages aren't being lost in the void. They are being intercepted, filed away, and ignored by a galactic network that considers us entirely beneath their notice. We are like ants screaming at the boots of giants, unaware that the giants built the anthill and are simply watching to see what we do next. This isolation is actively enforced. If the owners of Earth 3.0 are part of a monitored network, they likely adhere to a strict protocol of non-interference. They allow us to evolve, to struggle, to build our primitive rockets, and to slowly poison our own sky. They observe our technological acceleration with cold, detached scientific curiosity. But the moment we threaten to step out of our enclosure, the moment we develop the propulsion technology to cross the interstellar void and contaminate their perfectly engineered cosmic real estate, the quarantine protocols will undoubtedly change. We celebrate the James Webb Space Telescope for finally giving us a glimpse of Earth 3.0. We pat ourselves on the back for decoding the missing colors in the infrared spectrum to find their methane and carbon dioxide. But we fail to realize the terrifying implication of this dynamic. If we can see them, it means the illusion of the dark forest is breaking. We are pressing our faces against the glass of our enclosure, finally noticing the people walking by on the other side. And if the universe is a zoo, the animals are not meant to understand that they are in captivity. Humanity isn't being ignored by accident. We have been placed under a strict cosmic quarantine. Earth 3.0 is a stark, terrifying reminder that we are not the masters of the universe. We are an isolated experiment. The deepest philosophical dread comes not from the idea that we might be alone, but from the horrifying certainty that we are not alone, yet we have been weighed, measured, and intentionally locked out. We are allowed to exist, but we are absolutely not allowed to join. The universe is teeming with life, but the doors to the cosmic community are firmly bolted from the outside, and the masters of Earth 3.0 are the ones holding the keys. There is a fundamental, inescapable flaw in the way the human brain is wired to understand reality. When you open your eyes and look across a room or gaze down a long city street, your brain tells you that you are experiencing the world exactly as it is right now. You believe that your perception is instantaneous, a perfect, synchronized broadcast of the present moment. But physics tells us a much darker, far more isolating truth. You are never seeing the present. Because light takes time to travel from an object to your eye, you are always, constantly, trapped looking into the past. When you look at the person sitting across from you, you are seeing them as they were a nanosecond ago. When you look at the moon, you see it as it was, just over a second ago. When you look at the sun, you are feeling the warmth of a star as it burned 8 minutes in the past. Here on Earth, this delay is so microscopic that it doesn't matter. But when you step off the porch of our solar system and look out into the staggering, incomprehensible vastness of the Milky Way, that tiny physical delay becomes a terrifying time machine. The Milky Way galaxy is a massive, swirling spiral that stretches 100,000 light-years from side to side. The distances are so unimaginably vast that if a star is born in a violent, blinding explosion at one end of the galaxy, the light from that catastrophic event won't even reach the other side until 100,000 years have passed. And when we point the James Webb Space Telescope into the deep void to study distant, potentially habitable worlds, we are entirely bound by this absolute cosmic speed limit. When astronomers proudly announce the discovery of an exoplanet like K2-18b, situated roughly 124 light-years away in the Leo constellation, they speak about the world in the present tense. They tell us what the atmosphere is made of, they theorize about its global oceans, and they analyze the chemical signatures filtering through its alien sky. But the reality is that the telescope is capturing starlight that has been traveling across the cold, silent void for over a century. If there is a planet located 1,000 light-years away and an alien civilization there pointed a telescope at Earth today, they wouldn't see our modern, sprawling cities or our satellites. They would be looking at our planet during the Middle Ages, long before the Industrial Revolution even began. We are separated from the rest of the universe not just by trillions of miles of empty space, but by an impenetrable wall of time. This brings us to the most deeply unsettling existential paradox hidden within the leaked data of the James Webb Space Telescope. It is a terrifying framework known in fringe astrophysics as the temporal civilization overlap concept. To understand the sheer dread of this concept, you have to abandon the comforting Hollywood narrative of alien contact. In our movies and our science fiction, we always assume that if we find another civilization, we will find them existing parallel to us. We imagine that we will be able to talk to them, trade with them, or even fight them. We assume that the universe is a synchronized stage and all the actors are performing their parts at the exact same moment. But the temporal civilization overlap concept violently shatters that illusion. It proposes that what the James Webb Space Telescope is observing is not present-day alien life at all. The universe is nearly 14 billion years old. Our sun and our planet have been around for roughly 4.5 billion years, and human civilization, the tiny flickering window in which we have possessed the technology to actually look at the stars, has existed for less than a cosmic fraction of a second. The window for two technologically advanced civilizations to overlap perfectly in both time and space is vanishingly, incredibly small. Because of the absolute speed limit of light travel time, we are effectively staring deep into the past, meaning the occupied, engineered planets we are detecting might now be extinct, entirely abandoned, or radically transformed. Think about the sheer horror of what this means for the discovery of Earth 3.0. The fringe astrobiologists and rogue data analysts poring over the transmission spectroscopy of these distant worlds have been panicking over the perfect, mathematically stabilized ratios of methane, carbon dioxide, and oxygen. They have identified the unmistakable, hyper-efficient exhaust fumes of a massive, heavily industrialized alien biosphere. They have theorized about the artificial terraforming of a perfectly habitable exoplanet, trembling at the idea that we have accidentally peaked at a private, heavily guarded cosmic estate. But the temporal civilization overlap introduces a twist so devastating it turns that paranoia into profound existential awe. The industrial atmosphere the telescope is detecting right now might not belong to a thriving contemporary civilization. It might belong to an empire that existed millions of years ago. Imagine focusing the most powerful lens ever constructed by humanity onto a distant star system, waiting to see the vibrant, glowing heart of a new cosmic neighbor, only to realize you are staring into an open grave. The staggering quantities of reactive gases locked in artificial equilibrium might not be the active humming engines of a living society. You might be looking at the automated runaway life support systems of a completely dead world. We aren't observing a living, breathing alien society. We are observing the ghosts of extinct alien ruins in real time. The terror of the occupied atmosphere theory was the idea that we were vastly outmatched by an advanced civilization that was actively monitoring us. But the temporal twist suggests something far more tragic. They aren't watching us. They are already gone. The exact same light that carries the chemical fingerprints of their magnificent, terraformed world. The missing spectral colors that prove they conquered their environment, stabilized their climate, and built a global utopia, is nothing more than a lingering echo. It is the cosmic equivalent of walking into a grand, ancient temple and finding the candles still burning, the machinery still quietly humming, but the builders long since turned to dust. This perspective shift turns the entire discipline of astronomy into a form of cosmic archaeology. When the James Webb Space Telescope picks up tantalizing, highly controversial traces of dimethyl sulfide, a complex biological molecule that, here on Earth, is almost exclusively produced by marine life, the scientific community holds its breath. They debate whether it's a true biosignature or a strange abiotic glitch. But if the temporal civilization overlap is true, that faint, weak signal of dimethyl sulfide isn't the smell of a thriving alien ocean. It is the final lingering scent of a biosphere that boiled away or froze solid countless eons before the first human ancestors even learned how to walk upright. We are forced to confront the terrifying possibility that the universe is not a bustling, populated network of civilizations waiting to welcome us. It might be a vast, silent graveyard of empires that rose, peaked, and collapsed in total isolation. And this realization carries a psychological weight that is almost too heavy for the human mind to bear. It taps into our deepest, most primal fear, the fear of arriving too late. We have spent the last century desperately sending our radio waves out into the dark, blasting our mathematical achievements, our music, and our greetings into the void, hoping someone was out there to hear us. In 1974, we beamed the Arecibo message out into the cosmos, desperate for a connection. But if the light we are seeing from Earth 3.0 is 1 million years old, it means that while they were building planetary-scale megastructures and stabilizing their sky, our planet was still a primitive, chaotic wilderness. And now, as we finally open our eyes and look out into the universe, they have been dead for 1 million years. The tragedy of the cosmos isn't that intelligent life is rare. The tragedy is that the universe is so impossibly large and time is so unfathomably deep that civilizations are constantly missing each other in the dark. We are like ships passing not just in the night, but in entirely different centuries. This brings a chilling new context to the signal suppression protocol theory, the idea that space agencies are deliberately hiding the most undeniable data from the public. Sociologists have long warned that the sudden confirmation of a highly advanced, living alien civilization would cause global panic, market collapse, and religious destabilization. But how would humanity react to the undeniable proof of a hyper-advanced, dead alien civilization? What happens to the human psyche when the world's space agencies announce that they have found the absolute pinnacle of technological achievement? A perfectly terraformed, engineered world, and simultaneously confirm that the builders couldn't save themselves? The discovery of abandoned, extinct alien ruins observed in real time would shatter the fundamental optimism that drives human progress. We like to believe that if we can just survive our current technological adolescence, if we can just stop destroying our own climate, stop pointing nuclear weapons at each other, and manage to build ships capable of crossing the interstellar void, we will eventually achieve a permanent, immortal utopia. We believe that technology is the ultimate savior. But the ghosts of Earth 3.0 tell a different story. If we are looking at the remnants of a Type 2 or Type 3 civilization, beings possessing the godlike power to manipulate atmospheric chemistry on a planetary scale, and they are still gone, what hope do we have? The temporal civilization overlap forces us to look in the mirror. We are not staring at a new frontier. We are staring at our own inevitable future. The pristine, industrialized smog of that distant world is a warning written in the language of missing infrared light. It tells us that no matter how advanced a civilization becomes, no matter how perfectly they engineer their environment, they are ultimately powerless against the deep, unforgiving march of cosmic time. And perhaps this is the true hidden reason for the terrifying silence of the Fermi paradox. The great filter, the theoretical barrier that prevents civilizations from colonizing the galaxy, isn't a single cataclysmic event. The great filter is simply time itself. The universe is teeming with life, but the distances are so vast that by the time the light from one empire reaches the telescopes of another, the senders are already extinct. The dark forest is not full of hiding predators. It is an endless, silent mausoleum. As the James Webb Space Telescope continues to stare into the abyss, capturing the faint, ghostly light of worlds hundreds or thousands of light-years away, we must reckon with the existential awe of our isolation. The civilization that came before us is not a myth. Their chemical signatures are real. Their industrial exhaust is painted across the transmission spectra of their host stars. But they cannot hear us, and we can never reach them. We are merely the current custodians of the universe's fleeting consciousness, sitting in the dark, watching the incredibly beautiful, incredibly tragic reruns of civilizations that lived and died before we even existed. We have found Earth 3.0. We have confirmed that it is taken. For generations, humanity has looked up at the vast, sprawling canopy of the night sky and listened. We built massive radio dishes, carving them into mountainsides and spreading them across barren deserts, all with a single, desperate goal: to hear a voice in the dark. We expected the universe to be a symphony of communication. The mathematics of our galaxy are inescapable. The Milky Way is a sprawling spiral 100,000 light-years across, containing hundreds of billions of stars. Our universe is nearly 14 billion years old. With so much time and so much space, the cosmos should be teeming with advanced civilizations. Based on our own rapid technological acceleration, any species that started just a few million years before us should have long ago colonized the stars, built megastructures, and filled the void with undeniable radio chatter. We sifted through the cosmos looking for stars like our Sun, looking for planets in the habitable zone, assuming we would find dozens, perhaps even 36 advanced civilizations hiding right in our galactic neighborhood. Yet when we point our instruments at the heavens, we are met with a deafening, absolute silence. The cosmos appears stubbornly, terrifyingly empty. This profound emptiness is the heart of the famous Fermi paradox, named after the physicist Enrico Fermi, who simply asked, "Where is everybody?" For decades, scientists and philosophers used this silence to comfort themselves. They argued that the silence meant human beings were special, a miraculous biological accident in a dead universe, or that the vast distances of space made communication impossible. We told ourselves that the universe was a silent, empty void, waiting for us to inherit it. But the James Webb Space Telescope's discovery of Earth 3.0 has violently shattered that comforting illusion. If the telescope has indeed detected an artificially engineered, industrialized atmosphere just over 100 light-years away, it means intelligence is not a rare miracle at all. It means highly advanced civilizations are sitting right next door in our immediate cosmic backyard. And this realization forces us to confront a far more terrifying question. If they are out there, if they possess the godlike technology required to stabilize highly reactive gases like methane and oxygen into a perfect equilibrium, why haven't we heard from them? Why is there no radio traffic, no laser communication, no automated beacons welcoming us to the galactic community? If Earth 3.0 is occupied by an empire capable of engineering a planet, the silence of the cosmos is no longer an accident of distance or a symptom of emptiness. The silence is intentional. This brings us to the philosophical climax of our cosmic journey, a concept so deeply unsettling that it reframes the entire nature of our existence. The universe isn't silent, it is selective. We are not looking at an empty void, we are looking at a dark forest. The dark forest theory is a chilling solution to the Fermi paradox, and the discovery of Earth 3.0 provides the ultimate, horrifying proof of its reality. Imagine the universe not as a grand, welcoming federation of enlightened beings, but as a pitch-black, infinitely vast forest at midnight. In this forest, every civilization is an armed hunter stalking through the trees, trying to survive. The forest is dark, and the hunter cannot know the true intentions of anyone else out there. If they encounter another civilization, they face an impossible gamble. Can they trust the stranger? In a universe where resources are finite and the speed of technological acceleration is exponential, a primitive species today could become a lethal threat tomorrow. The only logical, guaranteed way to ensure your own survival is to remain completely invisible, and if you are discovered or if you discover someone else, to strike first and strike silently. In this terrifying paradigm, the silence of the night sky is not the silence of a dead desert. It is the silence of a jungle where the predator is near, and every surviving animal knows that making a sound equals death. The universe is quiet because the civilizations that were loud were eradicated, and the ones that remain have learned to hide. When we apply this pattern recognition to the data coming from the James Webb Space Telescope, the dread becomes almost suffocating. The owners of Earth 3.0 are not ignoring us by accident. They are actively suppressing their signals. We have seen the chemical exhaust of their world, the impossible ratios of carbon dioxide and dimethyl sulfide that point to a massive global industrial engine. Yet, they emit no stray radio waves, no easily detectable communications. As a civilization advances, its communication methods become more efficient, moving from messy, loud radio waves to tight, undetectable fiber optics and directed lasers, meaning their technological footprint naturally fades from the electromagnetic spectrum. But the signal suppression protocol theory suggests something far more deliberate. The inhabitants of Earth 3.0 know exactly what happens to civilizations that broadcast their location into the dark forest. They have purposefully masked their planetary emissions, hiding their true capabilities behind the veil of an artificially stabilized atmosphere. They are the ultimate cosmic camouflage experts, blending into the background radiation of the galaxy. And then there is humanity. We are the ultimate anomaly in the dark forest. We are the foolish, oblivious toddler wandering into the pitch-black woods with a flashlight, banging pots and pans together, shouting into the abyss to see if anyone is out there. For over a century, we have been blasting our radio signals, our television broadcasts, and the chaotic noise of our military radar into the cosmos. In 1974, we even purposefully beamed the Arecibo message, a concentrated radio signal containing our exact mathematical location, our DNA structure, and our solar system's map, directly into deep space, hoping to attract attention. We have filled our atmosphere with synthetic chlorofluorocarbons and massive, unnatural spikes of carbon dioxide, lighting up our planet like a neon sign that screams our exact coordinates to anyone with a telescope powerful enough to see. We did this because we fundamentally misunderstood the nature of the universe. We thought we were entering a friendly neighborhood, not realizing we were trespassing in a heavily monitored, cutthroat cosmic arena. If Earth 3.0 is a mere 124 light-years away, our earliest, loudest radio signals washed over their planet decades ago. They have heard us. They have seen the sudden, violent industrialization of our world. They know exactly where we are, how fast we are advancing, and how reckless we are. The terrifying part of the selective silence is not just that they are hiding from us, it is that they are actively watching us, analyzing our loud, primitive broadcasts, and choosing not to respond. They are calculating our trajectory, and we are completely at their mercy. But the horror deepens when we factor in the ultimate barrier of the cosmos, time itself. Space is inexorably bound to time, and the vastness of the universe means that everything we see is an illusion of the past. Light takes time to travel. The infrared light hitting the golden mirrors of the James Webb Space Telescope left Earth 3.0 over a century ago. We are not seeing their civilization as it exists today. We are seeing a ghost from the past. This introduces the mind-bending temporal civilization overlap concept. Advanced civilizations in the dark forest do not just hide in space, they deliberately hide behind the vastness of time. If the owners of Earth 3.0 are a Type 2 or Type 3 civilization, they understand that the speed of light provides a perfect, impenetrable shield of temporal delay. By the time the light of their industrial activity reaches our telescopes, their civilization may have radically transformed, migrated, or even intentionally abandoned that world, leaving behind automated terraforming engines to confuse any observers. We might be staring in awe at what we believe is a thriving alien metropolis, only to be looking at an ancient cosmic ruin in real time. Conversely, the temporal delay means they are watching our past. When they look at Earth, they see a primitive world just beginning to understand radio waves, just beginning to tear itself apart with early industrial wars. But they know that in the 100 years it takes for our light to reach them, we have continued to advance. The temporal civilization overlap means that every civilization in the dark forest is fighting a war of shadows, reacting to phantoms of enemies that existed a century ago and preparing for threats that won't arrive for another century. The silence of the cosmos is selectively maintained because revealing your current, real-time position is a fatal mistake. You only let the universe see where you used to be. The human brain is a biological engine designed specifically for pattern recognition. We look at the transmission spectroscopy of worlds like K2-18b, and we desperately try to fit the data into comfortable, natural models. We want to believe that the dimethyl sulfide is just primitive marine algae, because plankton cannot cross the interstellar void, and plankton cannot build dreadnoughts. But when the thermal anomalies form geometric grids that defy tectonic shifts, our pattern recognition violently snaps into a new alignment. We recognize the geometry of artificial construction. We recognize the exhaust fumes of industry. And once we recognize that pattern, we are forced to recognize the terrifying corollary. If they have industry, if they have geometry, if they have the power to scrub their atmosphere, they absolutely possess telescopes far superior to our own. And they definitely possess weapons. This brings the deep lore of Earth 3.0 to a shattering philosophical climax. For millennia, human beings have looked at the night sky and felt a sense of profound wonder, viewing the stars as a beautiful, empty canvas waiting for our exploration. We told ourselves stories of intergalactic federations and benevolent alien brothers who would one day descend from the heavens to share their wisdom and welcome us to the stars. But the data we are painstakingly decoding from the infrared spectrum tells a story of intentional, chilling exclusion. The universe is not a sterile void. It is a crowded, hyper-advanced, heavily occupied territory. The billions of habitable planets orbiting long-living orange dwarf stars are not empty islands. They are the claimed estates of civilizations so ancient and so powerful that they can engineer the atmospheres of entire solar systems. But these civilizations are terrified. They exist in a state of perpetual cosmic paranoia, bound by the unforgiving rules of the dark forest. They know that the universe is selective, that survival belongs only to the silent, and that extinction is the sudden, inevitable reward for the loud. We look at the pristine, mathematically perfect chemical ratios in the atmosphere of Earth 3.0, and we see the fingerprint of a society that has mastered its environment and then deliberately turned off the lights. They are suppressing their electromagnetic noise, they are hiding their true technological heat, and they are using the immense temporal delay of the speed of light to observe us from the shadows. Humanity's great tragedy is our naive arrogance. We evolved as apex predators on a single isolated rock, believing that noise, aggression, and expansion were the hallmarks of success. We assumed that a thriving universe would be a loud universe. We failed to recognize the pattern of the dark forest. We failed to realize that in a cosmic ecosystem filled with apex predators, the true masters of the universe do not announce their presence. They stay completely, deadly silent. If Earth 3.0 is taken, and its owners are out there right now, hiding behind their engineered skies and the vast gulf of time, then humanity faces an existential dread unlike anything in our history. We have already struck the match. We have already shouted our coordinates into the darkness. The silence that follows our broadcasts is not the silence of an empty room. It is the chilling, selective silence of a crowded room where everyone has suddenly stopped talking and turned to look at the door. We aren't alone in the dark forest. We are just the only ones who don't know how to hide. For the entirety of human history, we have operated under a comforting, profoundly arrogant delusion. We have fundamentally believed in the myth of the endless frontier. When our ancestors exhausted the resources of one valley, they simply walked over the mountains to find another. When the continents were mapped and the oceans were crossed, we looked up at the night sky and projected that exact same pioneer entitlement onto the stars. We treat our home world as entirely disposable, plundering its resources, polluting its oceans, and pumping synthetic chemicals into its atmosphere, all because, deep down, we believe that the cosmos will provide a backup. We talk endlessly about colonizing Mars, terraforming distant moons, and building generation ships to cross the interstellar void. We have looked at the thousands of exoplanets discovered by our observatories and viewed them as a massive, waiting catalog of future real estate. The discovery of a habitable zone world, an Earth 3.0, bathed in the gentle light of a quiet red or orange dwarf star, was supposed to be our ultimate safety net. It was supposed to be the beacon of hope that guaranteed the survival of the human race. But the data pouring in from the James Webb Space Telescope has violently dismantled that safety net, replacing our cosmic optimism with a paralyzing, suffocating dread. When we strip away the sanitized press releases and confront the terrifying anomalies of transmission spectroscopy, the myth of the empty frontier dies instantly. Earth 3.0 is not a virgin paradise waiting for human flags and human footprints. The pristine, oxygen-rich atmospheres, the mathematically perfect ratios of reactive gases like methane and carbon dioxide, and the unmistakable thermal grids of industrial sprawling megacities all point to a singular, devastating truth. The planet is already taken. The universe is not a vast, empty wilderness offering salvation to careless, destructive species. It is a heavily occupied, fiercely guarded territory where all the prime real estate has been claimed, developed, and monopolized millions of years before human ancestors even learned how to harness fire. This discovery forces us to ground the cosmic horror back to our own fragile, isolated existence. Earth 3.0 is not a beacon of hope. It is a dark, unforgiving mirror. When we look at the transmission spectra of worlds like K2-18, B or L, HS 114OB, we are not looking at our salvation. We are looking at our own terrifying reflection, magnified and distorted by the relentless march of deep time. We look at their engineered, artificially stabilized atmosphere and see the logical endpoint of our own reckless technological acceleration. We have spent the last century violently altering our biosphere, leaving an undeniable chemical footprint of rapid industrialization in our sky. We assumed that if we just pushed hard enough, if we just advanced fast enough, we would eventually become the masters of the cosmos, shaping planets to our absolute will. But staring into the raw infrared data of the James Webb Space Telescope, we realize that we are incredibly, hopelessly late to the game. The seat of the cosmic master is already occupied by beings whose technological supremacy renders us utterly obsolete. If the terraforming ownership theory holds true, the implications for humanity's future are nothing short of apocalyptic. For decades, we have poured billions of dollars into rocketry and deep space propulsion, dreaming of the day we can finally break the chains of our solar system and cross the interstellar void. We imagine heroic fleets of human ships leaving a dying Earth to plant our civilization on a new, fertile super-Earth situated perfectly in the Goldilocks zone. But what happens when we actually arrive? If every habitable planet orbiting a long-lived, stable star is already a manicured garden, owned and operated by a Type 2 or Type 3 civilization, there is nowhere for us to go. The universe is fundamentally governed by the laws of resource scarcity and territorial control. If we approach a world that has been meticulously terraformed, atmospherically stabilized, and monitored for millions of years, we will absolutely not be welcomed as brave explorers. To an ancient, hyper-advanced empire that values flawless planetary equilibrium, a fleet of human refugee ships arriving in their system wouldn't look like a diplomatic mission. It would look like an infestation. We are a species that multiplies aggressively, consumes resources with no regard for planetary balance, and constantly points weapons of mass destruction at ourselves. To the owners of Earth 3.0, we would look like a desperate, toxic swarm of biological pests trying to contaminate a perfectly balanced ecosystem. If they possess the godlike technology required to manipulate atmospheric chemistry on a planetary scale and engineer entire solar systems, their defensive capabilities would defy human comprehension. We would be eradicated from the sky before we even crossed the orbit of their outermost planets. Our grand interstellar migration would end in a silent, fiery flash in the dark. And what if we aim for the worlds that aren't actively guarded? What if we desperately seek out the fainter signals, the planets that seem to have been overlooked by the galactic empires? This is where the temporal civilization overlap concept injects an even deeper, more profound layer of existential dread into our future. The unbending physics of the speed of light dictate that when we look out into the cosmos, we are always inescapably looking deep into the past. If we push toward the stars seeking a backup planet, relying on the century-old or millennia-old light of a distant world, we might arrive only to find a cosmic graveyard. The perfect, artificially stabilized atmosphere we detected with our telescope might just be the automated, runaway life support system of a civilization that destroyed itself eons ago. The universe might be absolutely littered with exhausted, ruined worlds. Planets where the inhabitants consumed every drop of water, poisoned every inch of soil, and triggered irreversible atmospheric collapses, leaving behind nothing but the ghost of an industrial smog echoing through the transmission spectroscopy of their dead stars. If we try to flee our own dying planet, launching ourselves into the blackness of space on a desperate gamble, our grand interstellar migration might lead us straight into the radioactive ashes of an empire that made the exact same mistakes we did 1,000,000 years earlier. We would travel for thousands of years only to land on a tomb, realizing too late that the great filter is not something you pass through, but something that catches everyone in the end. This is the ultimate threat. The true cosmic horror of Earth 3.0 isn't just that an advanced alien military might launch an armada to wipe us out, although the sudden, terrifying detection of massive thermal bursts and objects launched from distant exoplanets proves that such an outcome is entirely, chillingly possible. The deeper, more insidious threat is the absolute certainty of our permanent confinement. For the first time in human history, the frontier is definitively closed. The psychological drive that propelled humanity out of the caves, across the oceans, and onto the surface of the moon was built on the fundamental, unquestioned belief that there was always more space, always another horizon, always a new continent to claim when the old one was exhausted. The discovery that the universe is a crowded, monopolized, or utterly destroyed network of planetary estates completely shatters that drive. We are trapped. We are locked inside the fragile microscopic bubble of our own solar system, fully aware that the prime real estate outside our door is strictly off-limits. Earth is not just our home. It is our cage. It is our quarantine zone. The zoo hypothesis reinforced model suggests that we are deliberately monitored and isolated by ancient civilizations that view us as a volatile biological hazard. If we cannot expand outward, if the stars are denied to us by the sheer force of ancient, godlike empires who have already claimed every drop of liquid water and every stable atmosphere in the galaxy, then we must confront the horrifying reality of our own limits. We cannot treat Earth as a stepping stone anymore. We cannot view our planet as a disposable cradle that we will eventually outgrow. We are forced to look down at the dying oceans, the melting ice caps, and the choked, polluted sky, and realize that there is no escape pod. Imagine the catastrophic psychological toll this will take on human civilization when the signal suppression protocol completely breaks down and the raw, unedited truth is finally acknowledged by the masses. For decades, space agencies have allegedly hidden the strongest, most undeniable data of alien technosignatures specifically to prevent societal destabilization. And it is easy to see why. The global stock markets, built entirely on the premise of endless growth, infinite extraction, and eventual cosmic expansion, will face a philosophical collapse when it is mathematically proven that physical expansion is cosmically blocked. Our religious and philosophical institutions will fracture under the crushing weight of knowing that we are a quarantined, insignificant species in a dark forest ruled by unseen, terrifying landlords who absolutely do not want us there. But worst of all, the innate human spirit, the relentless, hopeful curiosity that built the James Webb Space Telescope and dared to peer across the void in the first place, will curdle into suffocating paranoia. Every time we look up at the night sky, we will no longer see a beautiful canvas of dreams and limitless possibilities. We will see the digital fences of private cosmic estates. We will see the silent, heavily fortified watchtowers of an ancient network that is tracking our every move, listening to our radio waves, and casually observing our slow, self-inflicted destruction. We will realize that the silence of the Fermi paradox was never an invitation to explore. It was a strict, lethal warning to stay inside. The ultimate threat of Earth 3.0 is that it forces humanity to grow up instantly. It rips away the childish fantasy of intergalactic colonization and replaces it with a brutal, binary ultimatum. We must survive here, in the dark, without making any sudden moves, or we will simply be erased from the cosmos. If we push toward the stars looking for a backup planet, we will only find that the universe does not need us. It was functioning perfectly, locked in a mathematically precise, artificially engineered equilibrium long before our sun even ignited. We are the anomaly. We are the noisy, toxic, destructive latecomers arriving at a party that has been going on for billions of years, only to find that the doors are locked from the inside. The James Webb Space Telescope was supposed to show us our destiny. Instead, it showed us our boundary. Earth 3.0 is the mirror that reflects our ultimate failure as pioneers. We spent a century burning our own world to the ground because we were so absolutely certain that the universe would hand us another one. Now, standing on the edge of the abyss, looking at the impossible, occupied perfection of the stars, we realize the most terrifying truth of all. There is no backup. There is no second chance. The habitable zones are claimed, the ancient ruins are silent, and the landlords of the cosmos are watching to see if we have the wisdom to survive in our cage, or if we will simply tear ourselves apart before they ever have to intervene. 1 million miles from Earth, suspended in the freezing darkness of the second Lagrange point, a golden eye stares deep into the cosmic ocean. The James Webb Space Telescope is the absolute pinnacle of human engineering, a magnificent machine designed to capture the faintest ghosts of infrared light traveling across the universe. We pointed this $10 billion mirror at a distant sub-Neptune known as K2-18b, a world located 124 light-years away in the constellation of Leo. And when the light from that alien sun filtered through that distant atmosphere and fell onto our sensors, it brought back a chemical fingerprint that stopped the scientific community dead in its tracks. The data revealed water vapor. It revealed massive swirling clouds of carbon dioxide and methane, and most chillingly, it revealed tantalizing hints of dimethyl sulfide, a complex molecule that, here on Earth, is almost exclusively produced by living marine organisms like phytoplankton. It was the ultimate breakthrough. We had found a planet orbiting in the habitable zone, featuring the perfect temperature, the right pressure, and the exact chemical ingredients necessary to support a thriving, breathing ocean of life. But in the shadow of this monumental scientific achievement, something else began to take shape. The data was leaked, analyzed, and furiously debated across the Internet. In obscure Discord servers, deep lore Reddit threads, and fringe astronomy groups, the raw spectroscopic readouts were stripped of their standard scientific caution. People looked at the impossible mathematical perfection of those atmospheric gases and realized that nature rarely produces such flawless equilibrium without a guiding hand. And from this realization, a chilling phrase emerged, echoing across the digital landscape. James Webb just discovered Earth 3.0, but it's already taken. This phrase is not a scientific claim. It is a viral narrative construct, a modern mythos that perfectly blends real cutting-edge astrophysics with profound existential horror. It takes the dry, numerical data of transmission spectroscopy and weaves it into a tapestry of cosmic dread. Throughout our journey, we have plunged into the darkest depths of this mythos. We explored the occupied atmosphere hypothesis, the terrifying idea that the staggering ratios of methane and carbon dioxide detected by the telescope are not the biological burps of primitive ocean slime, but the active, planetary-scale exhaust fumes of a highly advanced, industrialized alien biosphere. We looked at the signal suppression protocol, the deeply rooted conspiracy theory, suggesting that global space agencies already know exactly what these chemical anomalies mean, but are deliberately classifying the strongest data to prevent a total collapse of human society. We broke down the terraforming ownership theory, a persistent and horrifying fringe belief that the oxygen-rich, perfectly balanced atmospheres of these distant super-Earths are not the result of blind natural evolution. Instead, they are the artificially engineered cosmic real estate of Type 2 or Type 3 civilizations, turning humanity's dream of colonizing the stars into a nightmare of trespassing on private, heavily guarded property. We examined the zoo hypothesis reinforced model, which proposes that these occupied worlds act as watchtowers in a massive, interconnected galactic network, deliberately keeping volatile, primitive species like humanity under strict cosmic quarantine. And finally, we confronted the ultimate existential dread of the temporal civilization overlap concept. Because the light from K2-18b takes over a century to reach us, and the light from other exoplanets takes thousands or millions of years, we are permanently trapped looking into the past. We were forced to consider the horrifying possibility that the magnificent artificially stabilized atmospheres we are just now detecting do not belong to thriving contemporary empires, but to ancient, extinct civilizations. Due to the inescapable physics of light travel time, the telescope might be capturing the lingering, ghostly exhaust of alien ruins that were abandoned millions of years before humanity even learned to build a fire. Across all these platforms and all these theories, a shared, unified narrative emerges. The James Webb Space Telescope discovers a near-Earth analog. The spectral data hints at biological life or bizarre chemical anomalies. The official space agencies remain frustratingly cautious, demanding more time and higher statistical certainty before making any definitive claims. But in the shadows, leaks and alternative interpretations claim the evidence is already undeniable. And the ultimate twist, the hook that keeps millions of people watching the skies with a mixture of awe and terror, is that humanity is not the first to arrive. These worlds are already taken. But to truly understand the power of Earth 3.0, we have to look past the aliens and look directly at ourselves. The Earth 3.0 narrative is ultimately less about astronomy and far more about the mechanics of storytelling. It thrives entirely in the vast echoing gap between hard data and human interpretation. The James Webb Space Telescope provides unprecedented insight into distant worlds. It is a miracle of modern science that can decode the missing colors of infrared light to tell us that a planet trillions of miles away has methane in its air. But the telescope has limits. It cannot show us the surface of these planets. It cannot resolve the shapes of continents, the waves of alien oceans, or the outlines of sprawling technological megacities. It cannot detect the radio chatter of an alien society, nor can it show us the faces of the beings who might live there. It only gives us lines on a graph, a chemical footprint, a tiny dip in the brightness of a distant red dwarf star. Into this massive void of unknown information, human imagination pours like a flood. It is human imagination that takes a weak signal of dimethyl sulfide and builds an entire underwater alien empire around it. It is human imagination that takes the lack of radio noise in our galaxy and constructs a terrifying dark forest filled with apex predators hiding in the cosmic shadows. We are the ones who fill these distant, invisible worlds with meaning, with ownership, and with profound mystery. We do this because the human brain is a biological engine designed desperately for pattern recognition. For our entire history, we evolved by looking into the dark tree line and trying to determine if the rustling leaves were just the wind or a predator waiting to strike. Now we are standing on the shores of the cosmic ocean, staring into the ultimate darkness, and we are doing the exact same thing. We look at a chemical anomaly on a planet 124 light-years away, and our pattern recognition violently snaps into place. We see the exhaust of industry. We see the geometry of artificial construction. We see the heavy, invisible hand of ownership. But why do these specific, terrifying theories resonate so deeply? Why does the idea of a taken Earth capture our collective consciousness so much more effectively than the peaceful, sanitized vision of primitive algae swimming in a quiet ocean? Because the mythos of Earth 3.0 is a dark, perfect mirror reflecting humanity's own deepest anxieties about our technological adolescence. We look at our own world and see what we have done. We see how we have rapidly and violently altered our own atmosphere, pumping carbon dioxide and methane into the sky, initiating a climate crisis. We see how we have historically treated less technologically advanced cultures during our own eras of exploration and colonization. We know our own capacity for expansion, resource extraction, and destruction. So when we look out into the galaxy and search for an intelligence greater than our own, we project our own guilt and our own capabilities onto the cosmos. We assume that if a civilization is 1,000,000 years older than us, they must have terraformed their planet exactly the way we dream of terraforming Mars. We assume they violently protect their cosmic real estate because that is exactly what we would do. We assume they are hiding their signals because deep down we know that broadcasting our own location into the dark was a reckless, incredibly dangerous gamble. The terror of the occupied atmosphere and the terraforming ownership theory is born from the realization that we might eventually meet a civilization that behaves exactly like us, only they possess technology that makes us look like insects. For a multi-hour documentary exploring the deepest corners of this cosmic lore, the ultimate goal is not to definitively prove that these fringe theories are true. The scientific reality is that we are still years, perhaps decades, away from confirming exactly what is producing the dimethyl sulfide on K2-18bi. The true narrative power lies in exploring exactly why these theories persist with such ferocity. Each of these theories, whether it is the fear of being watched by a galactic zoo or the dread of staring at the ancient ruins of a dead empire, reflects the deepest, most unanswerable questions of the human condition. Are we alone in the dark? And if we are not alone, what does that actually mean for our survival, our philosophies, and our understanding of our own supremacy? We have spent millennia believing that we were the absolute center of creation. We believed the stars were placed in the sky purely for our navigation and our entertainment. Even as science pushed Earth out of the center of the solar system and then out of the center of the galaxy, we clung to the belief that human consciousness was the universe's ultimate masterpiece. We viewed the cosmos as an empty, pristine wilderness, a vast frontier just sitting there, waiting patiently for humanity to build the right rockets, cross the void, and claim it all for ourselves. But the data filtering down from the James Webb Space Telescope is violently dismantling that pioneer fantasy. The universe is not an empty canvas waiting for our brush. The universe is ancient. It is vast, and the habitable zones around quiet orange dwarf stars have been perfectly capable of supporting life for billions of years before our sun even ignited. The Earth 3.0 narrative forces us to confront the profoundly humiliating idea that we are not the protagonists of the universe. We are incredibly late to the party. In the end, the mythos of the taken Earth leaves us balancing on the edge of a psychological knife. On one side is the crushing, isolated despair of a completely empty universe, where humanity is a miraculous accident doomed to eventually extinguish itself on a lonely rock. On the other side is the terrifying, claustrophobic paranoia of a fully occupied universe, where we are surrounded by ancient godlike empires that have already claimed all the valuable worlds and are currently watching us stumble through our primitive technological milestones. The payoff of this entire cosmic journey is the realization that the most compelling angle of the Earth 3.0 narrative is not the hard data. It is not the exact percentage of water vapor, the specific mass of the planet, or the statistical probability of a biosignature. The most compelling angle is not whether these distant planets are truly taken. The ultimate mystery is why humanity is so terrified, yet so deeply, undeniably compelled to believe that they are. We stare into the abyss, aiming our golden mirrors at the faint light of distant worlds, desperate to find a new home. But deep in our primal evolutionary core, we are secretly terrified that we won't find a pristine Eden. We are terrified that we will find a sprawling, heavily fortified cosmic empire that looks at us not as brothers, but as an invasive species. Yet we cannot look away. We keep searching, we keep decoding the light, and we keep spinning these dark, beautiful myths, because despite the existential dread, we would rather find monsters in the dark forest than face the absolute, suffocating horror of being completely alone.